Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and of course I had to use the brand new Simon Says Stamp Oh Bunny stamp set to start off my Easter series this year, which is late, but anywho. I pulled this set out and looking at all these solid images, I was thinking about stamping them in different colors, and then I was looking at my Distress Oxide inks, and I had some Neenah Desert Storm cardstock sitting out, and I was like, I wonder what these would look like stamped on Desert Storm. So I've got a rainbow of Distress Oxide inks here. These are kind of like my favorite go-to colors. And I don't have the new ones yet. Otherwise, I would have used the new, is it the Squeeze Lemonade? That's the new one. Oh, can't wait to get it. Anyway, these are the ones I'm using. And I was using my T-square ruler to kind of give me a visual. But honestly, I was finding it a little bit cumbersome because it's kind of hard to stamp when the ruler's too close to where you're stamping. But it did help a little bit just to give me a bit of a visual guide to stamping a straight line. You could also just use a pencil. I could have done that, but I was scared that if I did a pencil line and then these weren't completely dry and then I go to erase the pencil line and then I ended up smearing it. So I made it work. But anyway, I'm stamping the bunnies in rainbow kind of order in lines across this piece of cardstock. And this is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And just inking them up and then wiping them off between colors using my little Lawn Fawn chamois. Love it. I love this set. I think it is so cute. And then using it with these colors and Distress Oxides on this Desert Storm cardstock just make me happy. The colors are so vibrant and fun. I just loved it. So I went along and stamping right across the bottom too. I do plan on die cutting this with the largest of the Simon stitched rectangle wafer die. But you want to go right off the edge because you want to make sure like every area is filled. And then to fill in some of these like more open areas, there's a couple of cute little solid hearts in the set. So I use those to stamp with the oxides just kind of randomly just to kind of fill in those little areas so there are not any large gaps there. So after I had done that, I pulled out the new reverse polka background, and honestly, when I first got it, I was like, it's nice. It's going to do some cool things. But once you start playing with it, it's like, I want to stamp this. I want to make backgrounds with this constantly. So I have it face up, and I'm inking it up with Hero Art's Unicorn White Pigment ink. And I find the easiest thing to do is to kind of just brush the ink pad against it first, and then smush it down to really get a good solid coverage. And then I put another piece of the Neenah Desert Storm there, and then I'm just covering it with some scrap paper so I'm not getting ink all over my hands, and then just pressing as evenly as possible. And again, Unicorn White ink on craft cardstock, or like this Desert Storm cardstock, just gives such a cool look. I am going to be using this background more, and you can see I actually use the broken china. You can see it on the scrap paper there. I will do other cards with those backgrounds in the very near future. So I heat set both of those because especially the Unicorn White Pigment ink can take a very long time to dry. So I used my heat tool. Once they were completely dry, I die cut them with that largest stitched rectangle die. And then I'm stamping this outline cluster of bunnies from the Oh Bunny set onto some more Desert Storm cardstock. I had to stamp it multiple times because I was having issues and not paying enough attention. I was getting so excited about how these were turning out that I wasn't paying enough attention to my actual stamping and just making mistakes. So I heat embossed the two good stamped impressions with the Hero Art's white embossing powder. So I've got both of those stamped. And now I'm going to color in the first set with those same oxides. I've done multiple videos on this. I've just pressed the ink pads, the lids, against the actual ink pad so it picks up color on the lid. And I'd done this however long ago, and it just stays on the lid. So all I had to do is take the lid off, and I'm just picking up the color with my detail water brush. Not using a ton of water, it's more just applying the color. So I'm not too worried about like pilling or the cardstock warping because I'm not doing, a heavy amount of water or anything like that. I just want to get the color on. And again, these with that bit of water on the Desert Storm cardstock just look so vibrant. I love it. So I wanted to make sure to get all 6 colors on this, and there's only the 5 bunnies. So the middle bunny got to be kind of an ombre or just a dual toned. He's got, identity issues or whatever. He gets to be a dual toned bunny. So he's got the little bit of yellow and the bit of cracked pistachio in him. And then I'm going to add the blue, and then it was the Wilted Violet that really This color is amazing. And on, again, Desert Storm, it just is insanely vibrant. I love it. But here you can see, I barely touched the brush to that color, and it's just, I love it. Love it, love it, love it. So I did the rainbow colors on the first one, and then for the second set of bunnies, I'm going to use that white pigment ink. So I'm just going to smush it a little bit onto an ink pad here, pick it up with my water brush, and do the exact same thing. And you just get this fun, kind of soft look. You could intensify it by just picking up more ink, but I wanted it to be a little bit softer because I really like how white pigment ink looks on Desert Storm cardstock. It's just so nice. So really simple, again, not a lot of water, just picking up that ink and then just applying it to each bunny. And again, I'm going to let this completely dry. I set it up with my heat tool just to make sure it was dry. And then once they were dry, I'm going to die cut them with the little coordinating wafer dies. So both of those are die cut. And then I pulled out some black cardstock because I want to stamp the Happy Easter sentiment from the Oh Bunny set onto that. And again, messed up the stamping. The first one was good. The second one I stamped crooked. So I'm going to stamp a third time above the first one. So I have two proper even impressions. I'm going to heat emboss those with the same white embossing powder. And this one, once the embossing powder is melted, because I've used black cardstock and I use the anti-static powder tool on it, you can see all that white residue is left on the cardstock, which I really don't like. So once everything's melted and it's had a couple seconds to cool off, I just take a Swiffer cloth and rub that against the black cardstock, and that picks up all that little excess anti-static powder so that it's back to being just nice, crisp black cardstock. So I just wipe that off, and then I'm going to use my guillotine trimmer to trim these down into narrow strips and to separate them. So trim those both down, and then I can use the trimmer to trim off each end, making sure everything is straight. And originally I was going to do the colored background with the colored bunnies and the white background with the white bunnies, just, you know, to have one really bright and colorful and one just nice, soft, you know, white and craft. But then I decided to put the colorful bunnies on this white polka dot background because they would just pop that little bit more. So I adhere those with foam tape, and then I put the ones that I'd colored with the white pigment ink onto the colored background, and I really like how that ended up turning out. And then the sentiments I also popped up with some foam tape. So that's almost finishing off my card fronts. Of course, I'm going to embellish them in a minute. But I did that, and then my card bases are heavyweight white cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 11 inches and scored at 5 1/2. So I've got two A2 sized card bases. And then I've got the From All of Us sentiment from that Oh Bunny stamp set that I am inking up with Simon's Intense Black ink. And I'm going to stamp this on the inside of both cards, and I'm going to do both card bases at the same time because it's just going to save me time and make it easier. So I did that, and then I have the individual outline bunnies from the set, and I'm just going to ink these up with those same Distress Oxide inks and stamp them in rainbow order as well. I thought that would be really cute to let them all overlap each other and then get, again, all the colors. I did think about using the solid outline image or the one with all 5 bunnies, but then as I was trying to think of how I'm going to ink it up with all the colors, because I really like how all these colors look together, I realized it would be just easier to ink up the individual bunnies and stamp them. So that's what I did, and I just stamped them along the top of the sentiment, working from the outside in so they're kind of more evenly spaced. So after I had the inside stamped, I am going to adhere both of these card fronts to my card bases. And then once these are adhered, this is what kind of inspired the whole card in a weird way. I had come across these little pom-poms that I've had in my stash for some time now. I've saved them for basically these cards for the longest time. So I pulled out these little mini pom-poms, and I'm going to adhere them to all these little bunnies so that all their little bunny butts are hanging over the sentiment. So I'm just using Simon's Craft tacky glue and applying a little dollop of glue to the back of each of these little bunnies. And then once that's in place, I can press a pom-pom, and I just love, because this is the only like small size I have, but actually like on the ones on the end, they have like these great big tails basically on these tiny little bunnies. I think it's hilarious. So I stuck that onto there, and then I did the exact same thing with the other card, just added little dollops of glue, and then I'm going to press those little pom-poms into place. And then as a final embellishment, I wanted to bring out a little more color on this white and craft card. So I pulled out the Lucy's Rainbow Sparkle Mix Jewels, and just had a kind of a generous sprinkle of colors similar to the Distress Oxide inks that I'd used. So I just poured these out onto my tray and then just started like pulling out ones that were in similar colors to those inks. Once I was happy with those ones, I decided to use the Studio Caudia iridescent clear crystals on my bright colored cardstock background here, so they're not really competing with all the fun colors. And then once I had everything placed, I'm just going to use little dollops of the Simon Craft Tacky Glue. I'm just picking up the jewels with my Marvy jewel picker, putting down a little dollop of this adhesive, and then adhering all of these jewels into place. And once this adhesive dries, it dries clear, which under these ones it doesn't matter, but under the iridescent clear crystals you can see through them. So it's nice to have an adhesive that just dries like clear and matte. So after I got everything adhered, that finished off my cards. So as always, I will have a link below the video to my blog post with links to all the supplies used. Make sure to check out my blog post because this is part of a blog hop and there's giveaways and tons of inspiration. And this is actually day 2 of blog hops. There was a whole bunch yesterday with a ton of fabulous cards. So definitely check out my blog post, which will be linked directly below the video if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.